Hi guys, I'm back with another few chapters of Renee Watson's Some Places More Than Others. We left off on chapter 13. What was just happening when we finished is that Nina and Ava and Amara were all having a discussion about how Nina was going to visit her father in prison when she turned 18, that her mother didn't think it was a good idea for her to do that right now, but she was going to do that when she got older. And remember, the three girls are on their shopping trip in Times Square. Chapter 13. I know my birthday isn't here yet, and I have no candle to blow out, but as soon as I wake up, I make a wish. Say a prayer. God, please let my baby sister be okay. And then I say a prayer asking that I get some interviews done today. It's Tuesday, and so far I only have bits and pieces, not enough to complete my assignment. I've got to finish talking with Nina and Ava and stay focused next time so that I am the only one asking questions. And Grandpa Earl, I've got to interview him too. I ease out of bed, take my time getting dressed, and go downstairs. Grandpa is in the kitchen already, making oatmeal. I was just about to call up to you, he says. Good morning. Good morning. Hungry? He asks, pointing to the sliced apples sitting on a plate. Thank you, I say, biting into the sweet fruit. Is Dad up yet? He's got meetings all day. Left about 10 minutes ago. I don't say anything, just stuff my mouth with more apple. But don't you fret. The girls will be here soon, and I've planned a little outing. There are some places I want to show you that aren't on your list, Grandpa Earl says. Hope you don't mind spending a day with an old man. Not at all, I say. After breakfast, I wash the dishes and clean up the kitchen. Grandpa Earl disappears into his bedroom to get dressed. I stand in the living room looking around, wondering what stories this brown stone holds. There's an oak cabinet across from me, pushed against the wall. It looks like an antique thing, something Mom would use as a prop in a photo shoot of her vintage wedding gowns. On top of it are black and white photos of Grandma Grace and the rest of the family over the years. I wonder what's inside. I walk over to open the doors, hoping to get a quick peek before Grandpa Earl returns. But then the doorbell rings. Nina and Ava are here, dressed to impress again. Grandpa comes out of his room, grabs his coat and keys, and we leave. Because we're with Grandpa Earl, we are walking slowly, and I can actually look around without feeling rushed by Ava. We walk by a restaurant on 126th and Lenox that has a mural. Can we stop? I want to take a picture, I say. Ava doesn't roll her eyes this time. Maybe because Grandpa Earl is with us, maybe because she doesn't want to get the big sister stare down from Nina again. Grandpa Earl says, I wanted you to see this. We all step close to the mural. A Harlem neighborhood is painted against the brick. Black legends float through the air, some smiling, some holding hands, others reaching into the sky as if they are offering up a praise or flying away to heaven. Grandpa takes out his wallet. I'll give you each $1 for every person you recognize. Ava is quick to shout out, Madam C.J. Walker. Then looks at me, rolls her eyes, and says, she invented the process for straightening hair. I really don't understand why she has an attitude about me straightening my hair. I point and say, Michael Jackson. Then Nina says, Maya Angelou, President Barack Obama. And at the same time, Nina and I call out, Adam Clayton Powell. He is in a blue suit, flying through the air, one hand in a fist, the other open and stretched out, looking like some kind of superhero. Grandpa opens his wallet and gives us single-dollar bills as we call out names. Ava says, that's Josephine Baker, right? Grandpa nods and gives her $1. I scan the wall. Oh, there's Malcolm X. Grandpa hands me another $1 and says, all right, looks like I'm all out of cash. There are so many people on the wall that we haven't said yet. Grandpa tells us, I'm glad you recognize so many. It's important to know the ones who've come before us, who we're connected to. Before we leave, I take my camera, zoom in, take more photos. We continue on Lenox toward 135th Street. Fewer people are on the sidewalks, and there aren't as many street vendors this way, except for one man who is selling hats, gloves, and all types of scarves. Here we are, Grandpa says, when we get to 135th. This is the Schomburg Center. This is a haven for Black history. We wait to cross the street, and then, when no traffic is coming, we all walk into the street, even though the light hasn't changed. When we step inside, Grandpa says hello to the man sitting behind the front desk. Earl, my man, good to see you. The man says and reaches to shake Grandpa's hand. I think Grandpa Earl must know everyone in Harlem. Grandpa Earl introduces me to his friend and then says, go ahead and give her the spiel. The spiel. Act like we've never heard it before. Well, all right, the man says. Ava sighs. And this makes me think that maybe Grandpa Earl has brought her here before, that she already knows everything this man's about to say. The man stands, handing all three of us girls a brochure. We're a research library, which means you can't check out any books, but many people come here to do in-depth research on Black culture. We have all sorts of materials about the African American, African diaspora, and African experiences. Grandpa Earl interrupts. People can come here to look through the writings, photos, and keepsakes from African American legends. Nina whispers to me and Ava, Grandpa might as well work here. Grandpa Earl keeps going. The man isn't named after Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, was a young boy. The man it's named after, the place that they're at, Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, was a young boy in school when one of his teachers told him that Black people had no history, that we hadn't accomplished anything important. Mr. Schomburg wanted to prove his teacher wrong, and he searched to find out what we as a people had contributed to the world. The man at the desk adds on, he was a Puerto Rican of African and German descent. He dedicated his life to researching and raising awareness of the achievements of Afro-Latin Americans and African Americans. Grandpa Earl interrupts again, asking, isn't it his collection of literature, art, and slave narratives that started this whole research center? You know your history, Earl, the man says. Grandpa Earl turns to us and says, this place was created with you in mind. I know he is talking to all three of us, but for some reason I feel like he is especially talking to me. Our eyes meet when he says, your ancestors wanted to preserve your history, wanted there to be a place where you could come and hold on to your roots, know the story of how you got here. Finally, the man behind the desk speaks again. They may not have known you by name, but they had you in mind. Grandpa Earl shakes the man's hand again and says, let's go inside. We walk through the lobby and enter a separate room. The floor is covered with mosaic tile. Grandpa Earl tells us, this cosmogram is a tribute to Schomburg and the poet Langston Hughes. He points to the words engraved on the floor. Langston's poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers, was his first critically acclaimed poem, and this installation honors his life and the diaspora. His ashes are buried underneath. His ashes? I say, a little too loud, because a woman walking by looks at me with the sternest eyes. Yes, this is a sacred place, Grandpa Earl says. I'll leave you here so you can take it all in. When you're finished here, go on upstairs to see the exhibit on James Baldwin. Ava says, but Grandpa, I've already seen all this. My school came on a field trip. Look again, there's always more to see. He walks away, leaving me, Nina, and Ava standing in the middle of the cosmogram. Ava tells us that she is going to the gift shop, and Nina says, "I'll be upstairs," and walks away. So now I'm alone. I step into the center, place my feet right at the tip of the words to his poem. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I don't take my phone out to capture this. I just want to stand here. I just want to be. People walk by, coming and going. The elevator dings. Voices echo. Footsteps tap against the tile, but I don't move. I breathe in this place. Think of all the activists and artists, politicians and preachers and teachers who've walked in here. Think how Grandpa Earl said this was created with me in mind. I wonder if my ancestors saw me coming. How far into the future could they imagine? Just the idea that people like Harriet Tubman, Adam Clayton Powell, and Langston Hughes were thinking that one day someone like me would exist in a free world makes my heart pound, my eyes water. I study the cosmogram, which looks like a map to me, like a blueprint of all the places Black people have been, all the places we bring with us, all the rivers and stories that come with us, the Euphrates, the Nile, the Mississippi. I think about Mr. Rosen, how he told me some things you won't be able to put in your suitcase. Some things are intangible, and yet you carry them with you. Now I know what he means. We eat lunch at Jacob's, a soul food buffet. Then Nina and Ava say goodbye and head home. I walk back with Grandpa Earl to his house. When we get inside, I see Dad isn't home yet. I text him, "When are you coming home?" After spending the day with Grandpa Earl, I am wondering what Harlem treasure Dad will take me to. Dad writes back, finishing up my last meeting. "I'll be there soon." Grandpa Earl tells me, I'll be here if you need anything," and walks into his sitting room, or at least that's what I call it. There is no TV in there, no phone, nothing but bookshelves against the wall, 2 armchairs, and a radio on a small table in the corner. Nothing to do in there but sit. Grandpa Earl has the radio on and is leaned back with his eyes closed. I stand in the doorway hesitating to bother him, but he said to let him know if I needed anything, and I need to do his interview. I want to do this interview. I want to learn as much from Grandpa Earl as I can. I can't tell if he's fallen asleep or if he's just resting and listening to the news. I clear my throat, even though I don't really need to. "Grandpa Earl?" He opens his eyes. "Yes, Amara?" I was going to ask if I can interview you for my school project." Grandpa Earl leans over and turns the volume on the radio down. "Well, you really are something. Doing homework on your vacation? I don't know if I've ever met a girl like you." He turns the radio off and says, "Shall we get to it?" He walks over to the living room and sits in an old-fashioned rocking chair. It is dark brown and has a thin pillow in the seat. "Are you recording this?" he asks me. "Recording? Well, isn't that what a journalist does?" He stands and goes to the cabinet I've been wanting to open. He opens the left door. "You ever seen one of these in real life?" he chuckles. "This used to be your father's tape recorder." He'd walk around the house reciting poems into the microphone and making tapes of his rhymes. Grandpa hands me the tape recorder. Now, I have no idea if these will even work, but let's give it a try. He pulls out an unopened package of tapes and shows me how to use the tape recorder. "Let's test it out," he says. "We'll need these." He puts in batteries and hands me the recorder. I hit the record and play buttons at the same time, like Grandpa Earl showed me. "Okay, give it a go," he says. "Set it up. Introduce yourself and talk about the interview you're about to do." It feels weird talking into this machine, especially when it's just the 2 of us. "This is Amara Baker. I am sitting with Grandpa Earl in Harlem, interviewing him for the suitcase project." Grandpa hits the stop button, rewinds the tape, and pushes play. My voice booms through the room. It sounds lower than I think my voice normally sounds. Grandpa rewinds the tape again and says, okay, this time is the real one. Ready? I press the buttons again, and even though I have a list of questions that I wrote down in my notebook, even though I have more questions about Arturo, Alfonso, Schomburg, and Langston Hughes, I don't ask them. Instead, when I open my mouth, I ask the question that's been floating in my head ever since our walk from the coffee shop. Grandpa Earl, what did you mean when you said you didn't understand Dad back when he was a kid? Grandpa Earl is quiet for a long time, so long that I wonder if maybe I've upset him with this question, if maybe when he opens his eyes, he will tell me to stay in a child's place and stop asking questions that are none of my business. I watch the spokes of the cassette go round and round in the tape recorder. Think how loud this silence will sound when I listen to it later to take notes. Grandpa leans forward and says, times were different when I was raising Charles. I think I was trying so hard to teach him how to be a man, a baker man, that I wasn't always good at letting him be the man he was becoming on his own. Us baker men are athletes and, well, a lot more rugged than your dad was when he was growing up. I couldn't relate to him. I didn't know how to. Grandpa stops talking for a moment, then begins again. You know, one reason why I took you to the Schomburg Center today is because I never took your dad. I wasn't aware of all this when Charles was growing up. It wasn't until after my Grace died that I really understood what she had been saying all along, he tells me. It was just me in this house, retired and alone, so I started reading all these books she had around the house. The books your dad had left behind. Made me feel close to her, knowing she had touched the same pages, read the same words, and well, my eyes opened. I tell you, it was like being reborn. I kind of had to let go of some of my old ways, my ideas of what it meant to be a man. Grandpa Earl stops talking abruptly and says, listen to me. I'm sorry, Amara. This is for your school project. I don't need to be saying all this. Do you want to start over? No, you're fine. This is exactly what it's supposed to be. My teacher said there's no one way to do it. Grandpa Earl says, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is, what's the phrase? If you know better, do better. I'm trying. The front door opens. Dad is home, and he has 2 Nike bags in one hand. 2 Nike bags in each hand. I stop the tape recorder and stand up. Are those for me, I ask? Well, not all of them are for you, Dad says. I got something for Nina and Ava, too. And my day was fine, thanks for asking. He laughs. Sorry, I hug Dad, and even though I really want to take the bags out of his hand and go through them, I sit back down on the sofa and wait for him to show me what he has. What are you 2 up to? Dad asks, eyeing the cassette player. I'm interviewing Grandpa Earl. Dad sets the bags down and walks over to the coffee table, his eyes focused on the tapes in the cassette player. You still have this? He asks. He picks up the cassette player like it's something precious. I have a lot of your stuff, Grandpa Earl says. I'm sure some of your recordings are stored away somewhere in this house. Your mama made sure of that. Dad puts the tape recorder down. I think he's going to go upstairs, but instead he sits on the sofa next to me. I think maybe this is a good way to get Dad and Grandpa Earl talking. Maybe I'll have something good to tell Mom when she calls to check in tonight. I clear my throat. Grandpa Earl was just telling me how much you loved writing poems when you were in high school. Dad removes the throw pillow from behind his back, tossing it in the middle of the sofa. He leans back, says, was he? I look to Grandpa Earl and say, weren't you, Grandpa? I sure was, Amara. I couldn't believe how your dad could just make up a poem right out of thin air, not even writing it down. Grandpa Earl doesn't look at Dad when he says this. Dad says, But your grandfather wanted me to play ball. Never mind how clumsy I actually was. It was all about the game for him. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, that Grandpa and Dad are talking about each other, but not to each other. Grandpa says, Amara, I have a lot of regrets. Dad gets up, takes the Nike bags, and goes upstairs. Grandpa Earl watches Dad walk away. He takes a deep breath, looks at me. I don't know if I should continue or stop here. But then he says, what's your next question? So I push the record and play buttons. I think of my next question, try to come up with something that will take the sadness out of Grandpa Earl's eyes. Can we talk about what you're proud of? I think there has to be something to talk about other than regrets and things Grandpa Earl didn't do so well. He didn't hesitate to answer, I'm proud that your Grandma Grace and I raised two smart, decent human beings. I'm proud of our people, how we've survived what should have destroyed us. I look at the cassette and make sure it's still running. I ask Grandpa Earl one of the questions from Mr. Rosen's handout. What does your suitcase carry? Is this suitcase a symbol for my heart, my memories? Grandpa Earl asks. I hadn't thought about it this way until he said it, but yes, I answer. What does your heart carry with you? What memories do you hold? You know, when I was a young boy, my mother took us to the candy store once a week, and we'd get caramels and peppermint candies. I would hold on to mine and sit under the porch, savoring it till the candy disappeared from my tongue. Grandpa Earl tells me, I haven't thought about that in a long while. I don't ask another question. I just sit and picture Grandpa Earl as a little boy. He starts up again with another memory. And well, I carry the memory of holding my son and daughter for the first time. And of course, I will never let go of your Grandma Grace. She shows up from time to time in my dreams or when I hear a song we both loved. I feel her with me too sometimes, I confess. Even though she had never been to Oregon or to my house, I feel her sometimes when I'm in the kitchen with Dad and he is teaching me one of her recipes or when I am alone in my room reading a book. Grandpa Earl smiles at this. But being here in this place, I really feel her. We sit a while, just being together. No questions, no stories. I push the stop button and thank Grandpa Earl for talking with me. After dinner, and once I am in bed, all I can do is think back over everything I saw today. The mural of Black legends, the Schomburg Center. I think about my baby sister, how I want to bring her to Harlem one day, how I won't be impatient with her as she takes it all in. How I want to show her where we came from. How I'll whisper in her ear, you come from greatness. You come from strength. And that brings us to the end of chapter 13 and where I'll stop for today. So a couple questions in this chapter. One was, what does your heart carry with you? What does your heart carry with you? Another one is Amara's teacher told her that some of the things in the suitcase that she put into the suitcase wouldn't be tangible. So the second question I have for you is, what tangible items could you put in your suitcase? And then what intangible? What items that you can't actually touch and feel and hold would go into your suitcase? That's all for today from Renee Watson's Some Places More Than Others.